Thank you very much. Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank the bus industry for inviting us here, and I'm extremely happy to be here. I'm a little bit nervous because the previous 4 presentations were very out there, and I'm going to present you something more down-to-earth sort of subjects, but I hope it's going to be interesting. I'm going to talk about performance-based standards, which is the regulatory framework which is here right now and can provide opportunities for bus operators and the bus industry to improve productivity and safety. You've heard about the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, and I'm not going to repeat the facts what Sal presented yesterday afternoon. What I'm just saying that it's a new organization, and we are charged to provide the regulatory environment for the transport industry, including the bus industry. I was thinking about performance-based regulations, and yesterday when I was walking to the shops, I saw one of these little vehicles here in Singapore. So I investigated that, and Singapore has some performance-based regulations. If you look at that little truck, there are requirements in terms of how they can carry passengers and how many passengers they can carry, and which are the safety requirements what transport operators have to comply with. And I guess yesterday afternoon we heard about Generation Y and the service requirements, and that people won't be prepared to wait more than 15 minutes, or that was the magic figure, or 10 minutes. It's interesting that there could be different solutions for the same problem. I don't think that Generation Y would be happy the transport mode which is shown on that particular slide. In terms of performance-based standards, I believe that PBS is the most progressive heavy vehicle design scheme around the world. And the bus industry is not taking it up at this point in time, so I apologize for some of the truck footage what you will see, but you can see on that video footage that we've got different vehicles turning into an intersection. And if we could play that video again, please, you will see that we've got a 19-meter combination, which is currently a standard sort of vehicle in Australia, turning there. Then we've got a 19-meter B-double, which is cutting in much, much more. And then we've got a 20-meter long PBS designed vehicle, and you can see that it can negotiate that turn more easily. And you've got a 25-meter B-double, and that would certainly clear out any car which would be standing at that intersection. And you've got a 26-meter long A-double, which negotiates that turn perfectly. So my point is that PBS is an alternative regulatory system which is out there, which provides opportunities for vehicle designers to optimize their vehicle design. It's a word first, as I said before, and we've got safety and infrastructure standards, and it's a national scheme. In terms of our activities, you can see the PBS applications, and probably this I'm just reporting back to the members of the industry. You can see the PBS application numbers from 2012. It was 2013 January when NHVR took over the management of the PBS scheme from the National Transport Commission, and you can see that there are significant increases in terms of the PBS application numbers. So these are the new concepts. And if we look at the vehicle approvals, these are the approvals which are provided for vehicles which have been constructed and certified under the PBS scheme. You can see that there is a strong sort of increase, 20-25% per year. So the industry is taking up PBS, and it's great. And obviously, probably this slide shows that In terms of what sort of PBS combinations we have in Australia, you can see that the biggest numbers are the conventional truck and dog type of combinations. And this year we had 8 buses, so which is interesting. I thought that there shouldn't be a bus conference. We had some nice footage of old buses and concepts. There is on the right-hand side one of our first Australian double-decker, and on the left-hand side a semi-trailer bus, which was actually used in Sydney for a short period of time. So I guess PBS is opening up new opportunities all the time. If now I'm concentrating on buses, we've heard so many times during the conference that there is a huge pressure on the public transport system, and there is a push for a more efficient operation of the public transport systems around the country and around the world. Obviously, here or in Australia, there are 2 main issues. First is the mass limits, and the second is vehicle dimensions. And I guess those are limiting factors, and probably during the question time I will be asking some of our experts in terms of the weight penalties and so on for these new technologies, because unfortunately the infrastructure limitations are there and we are facing to those limitations today. PBS is controlling how vehicles travel on the road. So I guess that's a good thing about PBS, that you can have innovative thinking and see how you could optimize your vehicle for certain operations. As I said, the bus industry in general is underrepresented within the PBS scheme. So look at the dimensions. That's a controversial one. I can again report that a year ago, back it was I think 2013 or 14 when I raised this first, that National Heavy Vehicle Regulator received an application for a bus which was wider than 2.5 meter, and PBS provides the regulatory framework for approving a combination. Your last meeting back in Canberra, I think it was in March, I reported that the design approval was issued, and now I can report that the vehicle approval was issued for the vehicle, and there's a likelihood that a trial operation will be starting shortly in Brisbane for this. So far, the operator is extremely happy with the performance of the bus. It's going to be running on a few road services in Brisbane. What's, I guess, important that this relatively short or small increase in terms of the vehicle width is representing a major problem within the current regulatory thinking. And the access issues in connection with this bus are significant in most jurisdictions. If I look at some of our PBS buses, there was another issue with rear overhang. We've got some national notices in connection with the maximum rear overhang for certain buses, but you can see on the table that there are still significant differences between the jurisdictions in terms of how they provide access for these buses. So if a vehicle doesn't comply with the prescriptive rules, obviously there is the only opportunity is to go towards PBS. And this is why we see a number of vehicles within the PBS schemes where the rear overhang doesn't comply with some of the requirements. Obviously, these vehicles are going through significant assessments, computer simulation, and so on. But these are the good examples which would illustrate that the current PBS standards might not be suitable for all buses. We have experienced some problems with some of these buses where basically some of the tag trailers, the self-steering systems of those tag trailers had to be locked in order to comply with the PBS standards. So on one hand, we are providing a regulatory sort of framework. On the other hand, we might basically control some of the features of these vehicles, which are obviously beneficial. In terms of masses, I guess that's a critical point for the industry. And we had discussions about this yesterday, and I believe that there is a generic need for a review of the current mass limits. Obviously, mass limits would have a significant impact on productivity, safety, and also the infrastructure. So it's a very sort of complex field. There are, from a regulatory perspective, it's also, there is an issue that we should consider the impacts on other industry areas. I'm pretty sure that you have heard those sort of views from, let's say, from different parts of the heavy vehicle industries, that if it's possible that buses have increased axle loads, how come a truck which might have the same axle configuration cannot have that? And obviously those sort of views we have to be managed properly. Currently we are looking at the 2 and 3 axle bus mass limits, and there is a likelihood that those limits will be managed under prescriptive rules, so national notices. Sometimes if you are not able to do your work so quickly, then that's an advantage. I was working on my presentation this morning, and when I received this news from New South Wales, where the government just introduced a big plan for improving the bus rapid transport services in certain areas of Sydney, and they're gonna look at new double-decker buses, and I congratulate, that's a fantastic initiative. But that brings me to my other subject, in terms of the bus masses, the axle configurations. PBS option is there, but mainly there for those buses which might have different axle configurations. On this chart, you can see on the right-hand side 2 Australian double-deckers. On the top, there is one service which is running in Melbourne, and also the bottom one, which is a PBS-approved version. What the issue is that some of the axle loads which currently apply for these buses actually not beneficial, and they are driving, that's my view, they are driving vehicle design. The twin steer axle would have better mass limits than if you have a tandem axle at the back with the tag. So it provides a driving force for bus manufacturers to design a vehicle which comply with the current Australian requirements. But the trend is, if you look around the world, that the twin steer buses are not that popular. On the bottom there is one which is a Singaporean double-decker, and the second one is the 4-axle one that I took that picture in Brazil. So my question is, shouldn't we consider the manufacturing trends, how we can source those vehicles, and what sort of regulatory environment would make it better for the manufacturers to produce these vehicles? That's a question probably what I won't be able to address. There are other issues like front overhang, and PBS as a tool is used to assess the performance of these vehicles. Currently there are projects in Melbourne and also in the ACT where they are trying to extend the operation of buses which would have bike racks fitted, and PBS with the sweat part assessment and with very strict sort of standards is a tool which would have to make those sort of access decisions. And if I look at the future, and I only have just a couple of slides, or just one slide for the future, if you look at that video there, that's a bus and a trailer together. You wouldn't be able to do that. If we could run that again, please. We couldn't do that bus, couldn't put that on the network under the prescriptive rules. And currently there are inquiries about that, and PBS might be an option for the development of that sort of vehicle, which is an interesting sort of concept. So PBS basically is there to support bus manufacturers and operators to come up with better designs, better operations, more efficient and more safe operations, and overcoming the design limitations which are currently there. I'm not sure what the future brings. We hear all these predictions, 20 years forward and 30 years and so on. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if we're going to have longer buses, articulated buses, or the bus trains, what you just saw there. But what I know that we've got a regulatory framework here which will be there, and I would encourage the bus industry to think about that. And in the future, we're going to work with the industry and review some of those standards to make it even more accessible for the industry. Thank you.